Let's hear from Daragh Maher. He's Deputy Head of Global Forex Strategy at Crédit Agricole, CIB. Daragh, good to see you. Just what's going on with the dollar? Of course, this is a traditional haven.
Well, people always claim it's a traditional haven. Actually, if we look back, it's had a very kind of checkered history in that. It's more or less a 50-50 play in terms of risk appetite, and that's why what you've mentioned in terms of gold, Swiss franc, the yen, they're the more, if you like, the cleaner plays for people who are nervous, and that's certainly the way it's panning out at the moment.
You refer to what's going on in the FX markets as a currency war. What do you mean by that?
Well, clearly, lots of economies would like to have a weaker currency. It's a stimulus, it aids in kind of getting growth moving again, and that's the preoccupation. Of course, not everyone can have a weak currency. The nature of exchange rates is there's a flip side. There has to be currency strength. And we've seen the Swiss intervene to weaken, the Japanese intervene to weaken, and the US for some time with quantitative easing has been weakening their currency. So in that way, there is this competition to have a weaker currency.
And how's the war going to play out, Daragh?
Messy. I mean, all wars are messy, and there's going to be casualties. I still get the sense, though, that in terms of credibility, obviously, the Fed has a long-running history of debasing the dollar, so in a way, they are the most credible.
You expecting QE3?
It's a growing risk. I mean, I've got to admit, it's not our central case. I think, you know, we will come out the other side without QE3, but we'll know more on that, I guess, tomorrow when the Fed talks to us.
It all also depends on what happens in the Eurozone, and the Euro has got that strong support around 140, 141. Where's that going?
I think short-term could go a bit higher. I mean, a large part will depend on what the ECB does this morning in the European bond markets, which I'm sure you'll talk about later. But if they can be aggressive buyers there this morning, that will be a boost to the euro. But I've got to admit, medium term, the peripheral story still looks so messy, I'd still be a seller on a 3-month view.
The gold is still the safe haven.
Yeah.
What about the Swiss franc rising again this morning? Just how much higher can that go?
Well, I think the way to play the Swiss franc is actually against gold. I think you would sell the Swiss franc against gold, but you could buy the Swiss franc against the yen. It's all about relative intervention threat. Switzerland's isn't as strong as Japan's.
Efforts to weaken the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen, how effective is central bank intervention?
Well, certainly Swiss hasn't been great, and the yen has had mixed success. I still think Japanese just seem to have greater potency in the market than the Swiss. The Swiss have paid a high price through intervention in 2009. I think they're very reluctant to put their toe in the water again in an active way.
And of course, Japan acted alone last week. We've just had those comments now from the G20. Might you see more coordinated action as far as the yen is concerned to weaken that?
I suspect not so much. I mean, if you remember, the coordinated action came in the wake of the earthquake, so there was kind of a humanitarian angle as well as a purely financial one. This time around, you know, we are slightly more on a war footing, so there mightn't be quite as much cooperation on that front.
Where's the yen going? Could you see it at 70?
Oh, well, yes, I think you could. I don't think we will. But every time somebody's come up with a magic number where they said, well, we're not going to get there, we've got there. So I'm reluctant to say absolutely not. But no, I think we'll grind higher later in the year, but certainly not this month.
And what about sterling?
Oh, it's caught in the middle, isn't it? It really is like euro-dollar's little brother. I think the risk for sterling is it gets some independent weakness. Obviously, ratings the focus again. Is the UK's AAA rating going to come under scrutiny again? These kind of elements, I think sterling is somewhat of an underperformer relative to the dollar, but really just mirroring what we're seeing in euro-dollar.
And QE for the UK?
Possible. And
effective now in these new times?
No, possible, not effective. I think we've seen that even from the first round of QE. But, you know, for sterling, a weaker sterling would be, as I mentioned at the top, a stimulus. So it's certainly, if you like, an option for the BOE.
And finally, let's look at China and the yuan. I mean, that has been doing what over there? What are the trends that you've been seeing over the past few weeks? And is it going to be loosened there? Well,
I think the idea was always that just that Chinese yuan would grind higher. And I don't think people really changed their view. Yes, we'll see it accelerate, decelerate over time, but it's not really the big focus at the moment. Everybody's just looking at euro, everybody's just looking at the dollar.